Well, we've essentially got a playoff game on our hands. It's do or die for our San Francisco 49ers. Not quite do or die for the Rams, but it's getting close. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. And that means, listen, you can't have one behind enemy lines. You got to do two. So we're going to go back to back tonight. Starting tonight with my guys from LAFB. We'll hit this intro and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second, and it's Behind Enemy Lines edition 1 for the night. Like I said, I got my guys from LAFB. Y'all know Ryan, and you should know Skinny T. I mean, that's a nickname that you can't forget. Also, his name is Ryan, but Skinny T, known here on the program. Ryan, first of all, I'll start with you. How you doing, my man? It's been a while.
My brother, good. I know. I wish we could hang out more often besides just when the Rams and Niners play, but always good to hear that great voice, that great Chad Tebow resemblance there. Always good to see you. And did you say you're going back to back? So you're just going straight like 90-minute plus?
Yeah. Well, yeah. We'll end this stream and then I'll start another one because obviously, we like to link channels and do that whole thing. So
good for you. Well, thanks for having us on. So we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Skinny T, been a while, my man. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having us on, and I'm looking forward to this chat. I'm looking forward to this game, really.
This is see, I was going to the game in week 3, and I know, Ryan, you didn't make it out. Skinny T, you might have, but I couldn't find your guys' booth anywhere. I was looking for it. Anyways, very excited to go to that game. The result was not great for the San Francisco 49ers, but now we've got major implications on the line, and this is a great time. A great division game, man. There's so much on the line here. But I do want to start out before we get into the game itself and some of the other things around the game. I remember when we talked in week 3, and there was a lot of conversation about Stafford and Kupp, and could this be their last season with the team? Now, you fast forward through the season, there were rumors that Kupp might be dealt at the trade deadline. The Rams at that time were reeling. They were trying to get healthy. They only had 1 win going into the bye week. And ultimately, Kupp stuck around. Stafford has also been playing the best football he's played. 8 weeks. I think they're 6-2 since the bye week. Wins over Minnesota, wins over the Bills, both very quality wins. Some questionable losses in there. But Stafford's been playing really good football as well, stayed relatively healthy. So we'll start with you, Skinny T. Stafford and Kupp, are these guys here for the long haul? Meaning, are we going to get at least one more season from them, in your opinion?
I think with Stafford, you have to say he's going another year. Now, last week, I was wondering if he had it all still in the tank, if he had enough in there to finish off this season, and then comes out and proves me completely wrong, makes me look completely embarrassed by that take against the Buffalo Bills. I think this game is going to be the next test because he's got to put it together week after week, and he comes out of this game looking rosy, and I'm not quite buying it yet because we haven't seen a good stretch where Matthew Stafford has just played lights out. I think he started the year really strong and kind of tapered off a little bit, but I think he's going to play another year with this team. Now, Cooper Kupp, on the other hand, expensive contract, can't stay healthy, and I don't think he's really looked like himself. And now we've got the emergence of a guy like Puka Nacua. I could see a world, maybe he's not retiring after this year, but I still think the Rams moving on from Cooper Kupp after this year is a real thing.
What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, real similar. I mean, me and Skinny go back and forth all the time on our show. And I don't know if you saw, Skinny, someone comment on our last one, like, oh, I listened to 5 minutes of Stafford hate. I'm never coming back. Because we try to be kind of like you, Jesse, with the Niners and Brock Purdy. We try to be, critical and not just, blow smoke all the time. And I love Stafford. I think he's been absolutely great for this team. I think he still has the ability, like we saw last week, like we saw against Minnesota. his play this season is symbolic of the Rams play this season. It's just very inconsistent. Like, we don't know what this Rams team is. Last week against the Bills, you're like, this is the team we thought they would be in the preseason. Like, coming in, like, this was a legit Super Bowl contender that the offense could go toe to toe with any team in this league. The defense could be just good enough to where if they held teams under, 30, they could win a lot of games. Now, they gave up 42, but guess what? They scored 44, so they won that game. The offense hasn't looked like that in many weeks. There was Skinny, back-to-back weeks before this game where Stafford threw under 160 yards and the offense struggled and the play calling was questionable. So anyway, that's a long roundabout answer that, I think Stafford is back because he is, still 2 years on his deal. I don't see the Rams dealing him at this point. I think that the chance of them dealing him was at the trade deadline for a QB hungry team this year. I don't think anyone is going to be trading for a 37-year-old quarterback with his contract. And Kupp, I personally I agree with Skinny in the sense that something isn't all quite there. He's looked a lot better since being healthy, but I personally think he'll retire a Ram. So whether it ends this year or he does just write out his contract, but I think he ends up retiring a Ram under his own accord.
Interesting. Okay. Two slightly different opinions as far as what might happen with Kupp. The 49ers have decisions of their own to make this offseason. Deebo Samuel, a lot of people are saying that, myself included, I think they should move on from Deebo. Hargrave, CMC, possibly. Kittle's been playing great football. I don't see him going anywhere. And then Trent, not that they would move on from Trent, but he's had some personal tragedy that's happened this season. And on top of being hurt as of late, you never know. I mean, he might just call it quits as well. So we could be looking at some significantly different, I don't know about like significantly different teams all the way through, but some big pieces that we're kind of used to in this rivalry no longer being a part of this thing going forward, which really brings me into the next topic, which is just how the Rams have quickly rebuilt this thing over the last couple of years. I mean, I think I read somewhere this week that they are the second youngest team in the NFL. And you look at them and you think, all right, well, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford, they've got to be a little bit older. But the reality is this defense is full of rookies and second-year players that are contributing all over the place. And then you've got a relatively younger offensive line. Kyron Williams, Puka, we know, is only in his second year. Man, they have really crushed the draft over the last 3 years to get this roster to where it's at. And a lot of these contributors are young players. So, Ryan, I'll start with you. Like, just how different is this team from even 2 years ago? And really just kind of walk me through, like, how impressed are you with how quickly they've retooled this thing on the fly?
Yeah, it's very impressive. And, we've talked before, like, there's a joke of like, okay, should they tear this down and rebuild it? And it's like, well, they're pretty much in a rebuild. The defense is a complete rebuild already. I mean, the defense has, at this point from last year, I'm trying to think off the top of my head because it changes all the time with injury, but there's one Skinny starter from last year on defense right now? Two?
Oh man,
Kobe Turner and Byron Young, who are second-year guys, but they started last year,
Yeah.
I think are the only actual starters from
Roseboom.
and Roseboom maybe.
Yeah.
But even Roseboom wasn't because you had the linebacker. Anyway, there's a different linebacker rotation. So basically 2 to 3 starters from last year on defense. And so the way they've retooled that and drafted so well, and obviously we don't need to go down the rabbit hole, but obviously Jesse, how well they've looked this year with Jared Verse and Braden Fisk on that defensive line, and even Cameron Kitchens, who was kind of an underrated pick out of Miami in that third round, has come in and has a pick six and played fairly well in spot starts and whatnot. So secondary still needs some work, but I think for what they've had to do in a short time, to your question, has been really impressive. The offense is up and down in that regard because they have drafted well in the sense, as you mentioned, Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams are kind of, in reality, they're kind of the face of the offense. I know Matthew Stafford and Kupp on the outside world would be the face of the offense, but Nacua and Kyron are kind of like the future of the offense. But then they did the opposite on the offensive line and tried to go all in on stacking this offensive line, and it hasn't really worked. Now, they've found some pieces also in the draft that have been able to come in, like Bo Limmer, who's a rookie playing center now, because Jonah Jackson was hurt, came back, and just wasn't good. So they're paying him $15 million to sit on the bench. So that's another question of what they're going to do with him later. But it is impressive what they've been able to do. They're a team organizationally, I think, over the years that are one of the best teams on the fly about figuring things out in season and still be able to put together quality rosters and quality games out there. So the big thing with it was the consistency. But for what they've done, turning things around quickly, it is, to your question, Jesse, it's pretty impressive, I think.
Well, I gotta say, Bo Limmer was like my late round draft crush.
I remember you saying
And
that.
the 49ers had a chance to get him, and they went with Kingston, who's done nothing, didn't even make the team. And Bo Limmer over there just quietly being one of the best centers in the NFL his rookie year. You gotta love it. And you're right. I mean, it was interesting because Jonah Jackson, they actually brought him over and then started him at center. He got hurt. Then he came back. They moved him to guard. He just really hasn't lived up to expectations. You can kind of see why Detroit probably moved on from him. That's going to be a decision they make. I'm sure that they'll probably restructure his deal, move his contract over 2 years and let him go. But I think what's happened because of all the injuries to that offensive line, at least from what I've seen, is that it forced a lot of these young players to play a lot of snaps early. And now when the starters came back, they realized, well, some of those starters are no longer the best players and they've had to retinker and move things around and positions and whatever. But now they've really got this thing in a nice, good spot. Skinny T, I'll ask you, the same question around this team, but why don't you focus a little bit more like on the defense itself? I mean, the offensive line's been fantastic, but man, this defense started out really rocky, but as the season's gone along, it's gotten much, much better. What are you seeing from them?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with Jared Verse. What a pick that was. They haven't had a first-round pick in a while, and they knock it out of the park. Wasn't even really on my radar when I was expecting, different, styles of defenders. I think we're going to see a lot more of this kind of move where they pick a duo of guys and they say, we're going to get Braden Fisk and we're going to get Jared Verse. And, I think the guy that's really getting overshadowed a bit is Kobe Turner. Goo himself from what's that show that he was on?
The Masked Singer?
Masks. Yeah, that show. It's been they obviously have a fantastic core there. The funny thing is why is this defense still so bad?
Yeah.
In terms of EPA per play, they're towards the bottom of the league still. And they're gonna work that out there. They're gonna get some bigger guys along the defensive line that can stop the run, that kind of thing. So it's not completely there, but they've got a great base to work off of, and they're so young and still developing. It goes back to what Ryan was saying just about the newness of this. They've really dispatched all of their veterans. I was banging the table for them bringing Calais Campbell this year just to have somebody in there that's played a significant amount of football, because and you can see that youth and an experience sometimes where they're just their motors gone on third down, and that's the money down, and that's the one you got to really bring home. So I'm not trying to be critical, although it's coming across that way. But I think that, you look along that defensive line where they just did not invest whatsoever in for a very long time through the draft, or at least had no success at drafting it there. And then they just two drafts right in a row, they're just able to restock that. And, everybody likes to say that you can't replace Aaron Donald. Well, their pressure numbers are better than they were last year. And that obviously is a team-wide thing, but they've done it. They've replaced Aaron Donald.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. You can't replace him with one player, but when the sum of all the parts are better, then it eventually it does make up for it. One more player that I didn't really hear mentioned too much, that's a rookie himself, and he, for good reason. It's not like he's played a ton of football, but as of late, I've been watching the games. I got the little quad box up, and I've seen him getting carries. Is Blake Corum? Do either one of you just kind of want to let me know what's going on with him?
Yeah, I'll jump in. We've been pounding the table to get Blake Corum some carries.
Yeah.
When they drafted him at the time, and I won't go too deep down this rabbit hole and explain. I think we probably talked about it, Jesse, on the first preview show. But when they first drafted him, it was like, well, what's this? Like, usually the thought of drafting a secondary running back is to have that complementary running back that's a little different than your starter. And Blake Corum is literally Kyron Williams, just in a different body. And then the more we talked to Sean and the coaching staff at training camp, is basically they wanted 1A and 1B. So whoever was on the field, they could run the exact same play, exact same scheme, get the exact same output that they would regardless who was on it. So they wanted the same type of player. And then for whatever it was, 11 weeks, Corum had like 8 total carries. Like he just couldn't get in the game. And so we were speculating, like, is he just not good in pass protection? Like, was that the issue there? Finally, they're giving him the ball and he's running really well. And we saw that against the Bills. As a team, they ran well, but Blake Corum got, I think, the most carries he has of his career. So it's great to see. It took longer than I think a lot of people wanted, but I think it did have a little bit to do with that college to pro getting up to speed in the pass protection, which is a huge part of this offense. I think Skinny had a stat one time that's like Kyron Williams has like the most pass protection reps of any running back in football, something like that. So that's a big part of being a running back in the Sean McVay offense. And so we think Corum may have just not been ready for that yet. But in terms of just a pure running back, I mean, you can see his explosiveness, his vision between the tackles, what made him so great at Michigan. So it's been great to see. And it's a guy that I'm sure Niners fans would like right now with all the injuries they have at running back. And they seem to always find someone on the streets that can run the football, but I'm sure Corum would look nice up there in the Bay.
Yeah, he most certainly would. And, for whatever reason, he wasn't getting a lot of burn before these last couple of weeks. But I think even if it's not by design, that's probably the best thing that could have happened. A lot of these college players kind of hit that rookie wall. If he had to be the bell cow or ran a ton, he might be wearing down at this point in the season. And now he's coming in super fresh. And I think Blake Corum, if you watched him in Michigan, he had that devastating knee injury the year prior, I believe. And then last year came back, which was amazing in itself. But you could tell like he just wasn't exactly the same. Some of those backup guys were running the ball just as hard as he was, maybe a little bit more explosive. And you were wondering, man, like, is he going to be able to get it back? Obviously, the Rams saw something in him special. But I think that extra time and that rest also allowed his body to get up to speed fully back together. And now he's ready to roll. I think, like I said, I don't know that it was by design, but I think what they did was the best thing for his young career personally, especially when you see how he's running the ball the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think that's – go ahead, Skinny.
Yeah, that stat, the pass blocking stat, Kyron Williams is the #1 pass blocking running back in the league with 134 pass blocking snaps. The next one is Javonte Williams in Denver. He's got 86. So that's almost 50 more snaps. So it's obviously a huge thing for McVay, and it speaks also to kind of the quality of the offensive line or perhaps lack thereof. And they're not big guys, they're trying to block up the B gap with a 5'8" guy our size. It's a tough life. So yeah, I think slow rolling it on Blake was a good way to go for all things.
And Kyron Williams is a good blocker though, man. I've been watching him pick up some of these tough blitzes the last couple of weeks, man. He gets his nose in there. He's not afraid to get dirty. Yeah. You definitely see it. It shows up.
He's a dog for sure. Jesse, let me ask you this before we move on, since we're talking running backs.
Yeah.
Your listeners obviously know, but for any Rams listeners, like, what should they expect from the Niners running game? I mean, every week it seems like there's a different starter. See, regardless if he's on the Niners, I love CMC. I just think he's so talented. He's from my hometown in Colorado. I went to high school 5 minutes from where I grew up. So I have a soft spot for him. And it kills me that he can't stay healthy. But like, what should Rams fans expect from this Niners running game?
Well, we're hoping that Isaac Rendo is going to play. And Isaac Rendo was drafted this year. They traded up for him, got him in the 4th round. Another running back that they traded up for, and you're thinking, God, here we go again. TDP couldn't do anything. Sermon couldn't do anything. But Garendo's been a pleasant surprise, man. And what's crazy about him is he didn't start any games in college. And he came in last week, started, only had, I think, 15 carries, but he did have one explosive run of around 30 yards. And then he's a great pass catcher. He was actually a wide receiver in high school and converted over to running back as he got to college. And you see that, man. He can catch the ball, man. He made a real tough adjustment. Brock Purdy got leveled as he let the ball go. He had basically audibled or canned the play, went to a pass play. Garendo ran a beautiful wheel route, got wide open, but Brock Purdy was getting buried, so he couldn't put any pepper on the ball, and he just kind of hung it up there. Garendo adjusted super nice in the sun, brought the ball in, made a fantastic acrobatic catch. But then, unfortunately, he left the game with a foot sprain. They're saying he's questionable for this game. We hope that he plays. And if you see him, man, he is very explosive. He can be a difference maker. Patrick Taylor, who's been more of a special teamer, been on and off this roster, he would be your backup. And then, of course, Debo's going to get his carries. So that's what we're hoping for. But don't sleep on Isaac Guerrero if he does play. He can he does struggle as far as reading the right holes and all of that. But man, when he picks and chooses the right one, he is explosive. We're talking like legit 4.3 speed. So
yeah, well, I think he had 5 carries in the first game, so he got some run in there. And I think that's like the big question in this, which I know we'll get to it when we talk matchups, but like what the Niners run game looks to exploit in this run defense, because that's been definitely the Achilles heel of this Rams defense, especially, I mean, when you look at that Philly game, when you look at Baltimore, any team that wanted to actually commit to the run has had success, but for whatever reason, teams have kind of got away from it. We were talking the week before this game when the Rams played the Saints. Alvin Kamara was running all over the Rams in the first half, and then all of a sudden it became the Derek Carr show in the second half. Like they just decided not to run. Like I don't know if that's the NFL script coming out that they're like, this is what we want to happen, so we can't, because the common sense just goes out the door. Let me ask you this last question, and then I know you're hosting. We'll go back to you.
No, you're good.
And I don't need to backtrack, but hey, this is a fun rivalry, and I'm always a little more critical on him than I probably should be. It's a rivalry, so why not? Do you think Kyle Shanahan cost the Niners the first game against the Rams? I was getting into it with a buddy of mine because he's a big Niners fan, and I was like, to me, Shanny cost the Niners that game, that whatever it was, 1-point loss.
God, I'm trying to put myself in the moment of that game, and man, I think there was a couple things. Listen, I'm very quick to like criticize Kyle Shanahan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not quite on the fire him train like a lot of people have been this year. But I'm, I can be swayed, right? So I'm quick to criticize him, but just putting myself in that game, I remember the special teams were atrocious down the stretch. And I was at the game, and I was like right near that 40-yard line or so. So the 49ers are going from left to right, and they're right in front of me when they ran this play. First of all, the drop pass by oh my gosh, I forget, number 10. He shouldn't be on this roster anymore. They cut him, then they brought him back, Ronnie Bell. Awful drop pass. But the drive before that, Brock Purdy drops back. He's got a clean look on a busted coverage. Brandon Ayuk breaks wide open down the seam, and I mean wide open down the seam. And Brock Purdy, at least I thought live, was like, man, he's looking right at him. I'm like, throw the ball. I'm like yelling at my buddy who's with me. I'm like, how does he not? What's he doing? And then I went back and watched the all 22, and sure enough, the stripe of his helmet's staring right at him, and he like pump fakes, doesn't throw it, runs around, completes a short pass to Jennings after running around for like 30 seconds. And it's like, man, that right there was like the walk-off. So I feel like the 49ers had their chances. I don't know. I don't remember leaving that game thinking, hey, Shanahan really cost him in this moment. I believe they missed a field goal, if I'm not mistaken. Big kickoff return. Matthew Stafford got hot at the right time. Awful pass interference call, a big drop pass. Brock Purdy not throwing to Ayuk. Felt like there was so many other little things that happened that just really accumulated to this ultimate team loss.
Yeah. I mean,
but it was another 10-point blown lead. So, there is that.
Yeah. For me, it wasn't, I always like, I try not to be overcritical of certain coaches, because at the end of the day, players got to execute, especially in the NFL. Like there's definitely coaching blunders, but guys got to execute. For me, the reason why I was like, man, I feel like Shanahan really cost in that game is the Niners, as we've said all along with the Rams defense, like we're running the ball really well. I think they were averaging like 4 yards a carry. When the game was tied, so from the tie till the end of the game, 9 straight pass plays, no runs. Wow, and those are those plays where Purdy's running around all over. I mean, and a few of those plays, Jesse, and then we'll move on because we don't need to keep backtracking, but a few of those plays, the Niners ran empty. When you run empty, you're telling the defense what you're doing. It's a tie game. There's plenty of time on the clock. You're running the ball great, but you're going to go empty when the run game was what's working. So you're just telling the defense, all right, we'll just rush 2 guys and drop 9 in coverage. And that's what they did. So to me, that was why I was like, you gotta, even if you want to pass, like at least leave a running back there to keep the defense honest. So that's the stuff that drives me crazy about coaching or things like that.
I'm trying to put myself back into week 3. The other thing that I remember as well is just ripping apart the defense when I went back and watched that all 22. They disguised 0 coverages. They didn't have any 5-man fronts throughout that game. It was like the most basic vanilla defense. And every single time Stafford started to figure this out, he's like, every single time that he would move someone in motion, he saw exactly what he wanted, and he would just go right at the 49ers. He picked them apart. It was like they would go motion. It's like, here comes the completion. Matthew Stafford sees something, and sure enough, man, it was like just dicing him up whenever he needed to. So, yeah, there was a lot of things. You're right. I mean, the 9 straight passes isn't great when you have a lead. But Shanahan, this is what Shanahan does, man. He gets super pass happy out of nowhere when he has leads in the fourth quarter.
They all do.
So, but it's yeah, McVay does it too. It's a weird thing that these guys do. Weird thing.
Yeah. We need to just all start another podcast just called like Run the Damn Ball. Because me and Skinny complain about it every week, I think. About like, why are we not running the football? Like, what's going on here?
Run the damn ball. Dave says Rams lucky to play Lyle this year. He blows large ones. Wow. You pause. Dave also comes back and says large leads. Jess, geez, 10 points guaranteed. All right, but yeah, you know what you were doing with that one, brother. You knew what you were doing. All right, let's talk a little bit about.
He always calls him Lyle.
every time, Lyle. Yep. The weather. There's a chance it's going to rain. We'll see what actually ends up happening. And I'll tell you from the 49ers perspective, Brock Purdy, up to this point in his career, cannot throw in the rain. He cannot do it. I don't know what the deal is. You look at the Cleveland game, couldn't throw when it was raining. You look at the Seahawks game in the playoffs. It's funny because I remember the narrative was like, oh, he's a rookie. It took him a while to get going, but once he got going, he really crushed it for 3 quarters, and he did. But what everybody forgets is I don't think it was because of rookie jitters. It was raining in the first quarter, and now we have hindsight to look back and realize not good against Green Bay, not good against Buffalo in the snow, not good against Cleveland, not good in that first quarter against Seattle. Every time it rains, he struggles. So the question becomes, I know on the 49ers side, that's what we're looking at. Okay, well, if it rains, what does it look like for Brock Purdy? Can he get over this seemingly known issue? But what do you think about the Rams offense in the rain? I mean, they are a dome team. Matthew Stafford you would think would be able to cut through the weather with his arm. We've seen him in Baltimore last year, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm answering my own question. We saw him last year in Baltimore in heavy rain and absolutely diced them up against one of the best defenses that we've seen in the modern era. So maybe maybe Stafford's going to be just fine. But I've even seen Rams fan going, oh man, like not the rain. Are you guys worried at all about the offense and Matthew Stafford in particular if it rains? Skinny T, I'll start with you on this one.
On the offense, the only thing I'm worried about is Kyron Williams hanging on to the ball. He's had a little bit of a fumble problem,
little fumbleitis,
little lubrication in there. That's not going to help that at all. I think they actually really lucked out this year in terms of weather games. They only have one potential cold weather game out there with going to see the Jets. I think next week. So yeah, I mean, I think. Offensively, I'm not worried about it. Defensively, and we'll talk about this a little bit with the matchups. If it's slippery out there at all, this defense is going to fall apart even more. They struggle mightily with missed tackles. So their linebackers are out of position often, unfortunately. So, I mean, that's kind of where my mind goes. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I'll be quick. I've been talking too much anyway, so I agree. I think the offense, I'm not really worried other than Kyron Williams and fumbling. But if they end up turning to Blake Corum, who obviously played at Michigan, I mean, Kyron Williams played at Notre Dame, so it's not like he didn't play in weather. So it's weird that this year all of a sudden he has 5 fumbles. But that'd be my concern. Stafford, I'm really not concerned about. Has played well in his career since he came to the Rams. The Rams in general have played better in cold weather games, or I know it's rain, not necessarily cold weather, but in bad weather games. Back when Goff was here, that was a bigger issue with the weather for sure. And Niner fans know that they were able to sink their teeth into Jared Goff when he was the Rams quarterback, especially in some nice Bay Area weather. So I wouldn't be super concerned. It's not ideal. I mean, this team obviously, like most teams, plays better, but I think offensively it actually would swing in the Rams' favor because of everything you just said about Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I do find it interesting though about that defense. You're talking about missed tackles and things like that. That could be an interesting one. So I'll be paying attention to that if it does rain as well.
Yeah, special teams is kind of an interesting one when it comes to bad weather. And I mean, I think the Rams have been a little bit better this year on special teams, but the Niners have really struggled. So, I mean,
tell me about it. They have found the craziest ways to just be awful on special teams, from blocked punts to big kickoff returns to fumbled kickoffs to missed field goal. I mean, anything that can go wrong on special teams, they've figured it out. Now the last week we figured out that our kicker can't even kick it into the 20 allotted yards that he has. So now he's kicking short and getting penalties. Like, the whole thing is just foobar right now.
3rd round pick.
God, dude, thanks for reminding us. All right, let's talk about some of these matchups. Give me, I'll let each of you answer, and you guys can choose between the two of you who wants to answer which one. But give me a matchup that you're confident in, and then give me a matchup that you're worried about going into this game. I'll go first, just real quick for those that are watching on the Ram side. I am very, very confident. Actually, I'll start with what I'm concerned about. I'm very concerned about the trenches. So Trent Williams is not going to play. Nick Bosa is questionable, so is a good chance that he does play. But I think that's where the Rams' strength is at, especially the defensive line. They've really kind of turned it on the last couple of weeks when it comes to getting after the quarterback. And so that does concern me a little bit. And then I don't know that our defensive line, especially without Bosa, can generate pressure. That offensive line did a really good job last week against Buffalo. And that Matthew Stafford has time. It is over. They've got to rattle him. They've got to get him off his spots. They've got to get him uncomfortable, because if he's able to just sit back there and do what he wants to do, it's going to be a very, very long night. So that's what I'm concerned about. What I'm confident in, and Skinny T brought this up a little bit earlier, the linebackers. I think the 49ers can absolutely dice those linebackers up. And I would like to see a bit of an old school Jimmy G game plan from the 49ers where they go horizontally this week. I think that they can go horizontally, stretch those linebackers out, make them tackle also, or make them cover and make those corners tackle. I think that's a game plan that can really work this week. Get Debo out in some screens, get Garendo out there, Kittle, even Juice against those linebackers. I think that's a matchup that the 49ers can really exploit. So that's a matchup I'm confident in. The other side is a matchup that I'm not so confident in. Who wants to give me the matchup that you are confident in for the Rams?
Go ahead, Skinny. I'll let you be confident.
Okay, so I'm confident that both of these teams can run the ball against each other. EPA per play, they are the San Francisco 49ers are 28th against the run. Rams 27th. So I think, I'm not a run the damn ball kind of guy, but I think the team that is able to find it on the ground in this one, especially if it gets into that weather situation, Kyron Williams is always falling forward. He's always picking up another extra yard. You think it's going to go for 2, it goes for 3. You think it's 5, it's 9. So I think as long as McVay doesn't, this gets into my not confident side, but if McVay is able to be successful on the first or second offensive drive, I think he'll stick with the run game. But if he's not, he's going to get away from it. That's kind of his MO. But I'm confident in either one of these teams if they want to run the ball.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll go concern, and I am a run the damn ball guy, but this is going to sound a little weird, but my concern would actually be in this Rams pass defense. And that one, Kobe Durant, their corner, who has really come on this year, is out for this game. And they've just had some struggles with corners in general, just staying healthy. But then also you mentioned this, I don't know if we want to call it a new emergence, but how Kittle has looked like George Kittle finally these last few weeks.
Yeah.
Kind of was gone even into last year was like, where's George Kittle? What's going on with him in the offense? Beginning of the year, not really there. Now all of a sudden he is the George Kittle we've known for quite some time as one of the elite tight ends in the game. And these Rams tight ends are no match for George Kittle. And so if the Rams aren't putting a safety on him or coveraging him with someone else besides just one of these linebackers, or what the Rams defense has loved to do, even since when Brandon Staley was here, we've had 3 different corners since then, but for some reason they love putting edge rushers on tight ends. And so if we start seeing edge rushers in the red zone on George Kittle, he's going to have a 3 touchdown day. So that would be my concern.
Well, to both of you guys, to both of you guys' point, neither Debo Samuel or George Kittle played in the last game. So, I mean, I think, those are your yak guys. Those are your horizontal guys. So it could be interesting to watch that. Watch Christian Roseboom and Omar Spates chasing those guys around.
And neither did Kupp and Nakua either. So this is like a totally different game altogether.
It is a whole
4 best players didn't play the first iteration, and they're playing this one.
No, you're absolutely right about that. That is 4 big players that didn't play. I also, if I remember correctly, at that time the Rams were down 3 starting offensive linemen going into that game. That's also the game that Hargrave tore, I believe it was his tricep, and has been out for the season. And then we haven't seen Ayuk since a couple weeks after that. So really a lot of changes for both these teams. You guys didn't get CMC on either side. CMC didn't play early. He came back for a few weeks and now he's down again. So you avoided him both times. Definitely very interesting. But I would say another concern is definitely the special teams. Jake Moody, like I can't trust him, man. It seems like the 49ers somehow can go weeks without really him being under any pressure. Like they've gotten blown out twice, so it really didn't matter. And then they did the blowing out of the Bears this last week. So really we haven't seen him under pressure a lot lately. But man, if this game gets tight and Jake Moody has to make a big kick, I have zero confidence in that guy. It's such a bad draft pick, man. Taking a kicker in round 3 is awful in itself. And the fact that he's not even near a top 5 kicker in this league makes it even worse. It was just such a waste of a pick, man.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, Josh Carty, we got in the 7th round. Even that feels like, was it worth a draft pick? Like, why not just sign one of these guys off the streets? Because he's struggled down lately. We don't know where we're getting with Carty.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't know he was having the yips. So there you go. That's rookie kickers having the yips is never a good thing. Man, what actually kickers around the league are struggling like crazy. The Vikings kicker got the yips. Justin Tucker. You have what's his name in Kansas City is just finally coming back from IR or designated. Butker. Yeah, I mean,
the Dallas guy has had some misses lately.
Fairbairn's had some misses. Like, what is going on with kicking this year? It's like all these great kickers are just awful all of a sudden. It's weird.
One job.
One freaking job. Dave says Sean is going to have that football coaching for dummies book this week. So they are in Lyle's game plan. Lyle's going to lose it.
Lyle?
He called Kyle Shanahan. He calls him Lyle because the L, he takes L's.
Got it.
Is going to lose it. And the whole line is going to sing Lyle sucks. He really, really sucks. He hates him, man. He cannot stand Kyle Shanahan. Alfred says, Skinny T, can I have your autograph? I think we can make that
absolutely
happen. We can arrange that. Yeah.
Alfred does our USC show. So it's funny that he's our USC.
There he is.
He's
Yeah, perfect.
He's coaching me up. Coach Rower.
Nice. Dave says Lyle practices special teams in high heels. Oddly enough, Kyle doesn't really. He does 2 things that really kind of just blow my mind. He doesn't really practice a lot of special teams, at least when I'm there during training camp. And he's said this openly that when there's inclement weather, he doesn't make them practice with wet footballs or anything.
Interesting. Which
is strange. Like if you know you're gonna have heavy rain, why wouldn't you prepare for that? But he doesn't do it, and he's like proud of the fact he doesn't do it. It's so strange.
That is strange. Even I played with wet footballs in high school. Like we practiced with it.
Yeah. Alfred says Ryan DeRude, 2 words: press pass.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means to you.
He always wants a press.
I'm sure it means something. Oh, he wants a press pass. Okay.
Yeah.
I heard you guys are handing those out over there. So
I guess.
Dave says
on the street.
Farmer Fran is a better special teams coach Disquito. I don't know what you were trying to say there, Dave. And then he says Lyle drinks so much because he loves the ground game. That was also weird. The whole drinking at the Super Bowl thing, that was strange to me. Dave says, epitome of the Niners in 2024. Debo, I'm not getting the ball. Did you guys see that? Did you see that tweet?
Yeah.
And did you see the community note? Yeah.
Like, brutal. And then he deleted it, obviously.
Oh, it's so bad. Yeah, community notes for the win. All right, guys, before we get out of here, we got to get the score predictions. I'll give mine first. I do think this is going to be a really close game. I do. But good news is, and Ryan knows this, I am awful at picking this game in particular. I am not good at it. In fact, even earlier this year, I picked the 49ers to win, and that didn't go so well. So maybe a bit of a reverse jinx here, but I am going to pick the Rams to win this game 27-24. I think ultimately it will be a close game, but Matthew Stafford and the crew will pull it out late in this game, much like they did the first time through, and they will dash the 49ers' chances of making the playoffs. But again, I'm really bad at picking this game. Might be a bit of a reverse jinx. What are you guys picking in this one?
Go ahead, Skinny.
I'm gonna say it's also a pretty close game. I'm gonna go 27-24 Rams. I think they're just healthy enough to beat up on the 49ers just enough.
Yeah, I think we all picked the Niners last time, and I think I think either me or Skinny actually picked the Niners to win pretty big. So I'm going to go with the Rams as well this time, and this is outside of, I know I mentioned Durant is going to miss this game, but I think they're just about the healthiest they've been all season, specifically on offense. And it's a short week, but in their post-game victory speech, when Matthew Stafford went to break him down, this is directly after a Bills win, he goes, "Come on, boys, let's go F and beat the Niners." So they're fired up for this game. They know what it means for the season. They know if they can win this game and be only a game back of the Seahawks, they basically shut the door on the Niners' playoff hopes and keep theirs alive. So I'll go Rams. I think the offense, like we said this whole time, we have yet to see consistency. Can we see it in back-to-back weeks, their first time all year? I'm going to say yes. They put up 31 points. Niners offense comes rolling back late, though. They make it close, 31-27. I'll go Rams win.
Deometer Lenore talked a little trash after that game, too. So he's got some backing up to do in this one, and now he's got to do it against
got a bunch of money.
Puka Nacua. So here we go, baby. It's going to be a great, great matchup. Well, fellas, thank you so much for joining me. For everybody that's in the chat on my side, make sure you go subscribe to these guys, LAFB. Link will be in the description. And then also keep it tuned, not to this exact show. It will be a separate show coming up in about 3 or 4 minutes. I will have my guy Jake, who covers the Rams as well, and we'll be doing a whole separate show with new topics ready to go to get you fully prepared for this. Ryan, Skinny T, thank you guys so much for joining me. As always, stay blessed, chat. I'll see you in just a few minutes.